This is your Chargers linebacker, Dan Henley, and you're tuning in with Chargers Unleashed.
Welcome to another edition of Chargers Unleashed. Jake Hefner and Dan Wolkenstein here with you from the LA Football Network. If this is your first time tuning in to the show, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button on YouTube. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Dan Wolkenstein is back from his vacation. I am neither on vacation nor back in my house, still dealing with all of my water damage. But Dan, I think that's a little bit appropriate for what all Chargers fans had to deal with over the weekend, where the outcome of the game was outweighed by the aftermath of what took place and what we obviously have to talk about leading into week 4 of the Chargers NFL season. So this is kind of going to be a combination episode. I know we didn't get to really a big recap earlier in this week just due to scheduling. So the fact that this episode is going to be falling more in the midweek, we're going to obviously recap what took place, go through all the latest as it relates to the Chargers injuries, do a little bit of a looking ahead type of perspective towards the Kansas City Chiefs, what the Chargers are going to be doing during that game, how they should have a game plan to attack that game coming up on Saturday, and obviously the bye thereafter in week 5. That seems great timing for what the Chargers are currently dealing with as it relates to injuries. But before we get started, Dan, how are you, sir? Was your vacation good? I'm sure it was better than what we were all feeling on Sunday afternoon.
The vacation was good. Thank you. Welcome to Chargers Unleashed. For those of you who are tuning in live, you know the drill. If you have any questions, comments, topics, frustrations, whatever it is, be sure to enter those into the chat. We'll do our best to add those as we go through this episode. Vacation was good, honestly. And this was one of the few games that I watched almost none of live. And so I got little snippets from Jake as the game went on. And of course, the Chargers lose. I go back and, I know I'm the optimist of the two of us. There were a lot of things that went wrong in that game, and both on the field, injuries, mistake, whatever. There is a lot of good that came from that game too. So we'll get to that. But Jake, before we do that, in the recap, voicemails as well. Chargers Unleashed hotline was alive and well after a loss. So we'll go through some feelings as well. Let's talk about our friends over at BetOnline.
I want to remind everybody that BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and the number one source for everything football. BetOnline has every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads for you to bet on during the games. You think you know your stuff? Get in on the $200,000 mega contest and pick 5 games against the spread every week for your chance to win at weekly prizes and a share of $200K when the game is over. Head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with one of our 150 slot games. Head on over to the website today. That's betonline.ag to get in on the action. BetOnline, the game starts here.
So, Chargers fall to the Steelers. Get to 2-1 after losing 20-10. Off the top, Chargers, I think the main storylines of this game, and Jake, keep me honest here, they lose the battle this game. They hung in there tight, especially on defense. There were some self-inflicting wounds, which we'll get into here. Penalties absolutely crippled this team. Injuries, you hate to see. You saw many of them to important folks on this Chargers team, a la Joe Alt, Rashawn Slater, Justin Herbert. Now you're seeing suspension from Derwin James. The list keeps going. Lots to go through on this. I don't know where to start, but generally speaking, I think my main takeaway from that game, and I posted it on Twitter or X soon after I did watch it, which was yesterday. This was a winnable game for the Chargers, in my opinion, with the injuries and with the strip sacks and the stuff negatively happening to the Chargers, and TJ Watt doing his thing, and Joe Alt and Slater getting beat, and with the Calvin Austin busted play for a touchdown on Alohi Gilman. Even with all of that, this game was there to be had if this Chargers team simply played a clean game, played the Jesse Minter style we're all accustomed to seeing, clean, no mistakes, tackling, efficient. no penalties, but none of that happened. And we'll get to it here in a bit, but Jake, constant shooting themselves in the foot, in my opinion, is what costed this game for the Chargers more than anything else. You hear a lot of narratives about this team. They got physically outmatched. Miss me with that. That's not true. If you go back and watch the game, lots of what happened in that mismatch physically was that last drive when everyone knew that game was a wrap. Prior to the 20-10 Calvin Austin touchdown, that game was a 3-point game. Chargers should probably have been leading, but that was a lot. I went on a tangent there for a bit. I apologize. But Jake, to me, the game was there to be had. This was a lot about this Chargers team making a ton of mistakes, and you, I guess, got to credit the Pittsburgh Steelers for capitalizing on it.
Yeah, Dan, remember there was a lot of criticism even leading up to the game, whether or not Justin Herbert was going to be active. We knew that all three quarterbacks were technically going to be active. Whether or not Justin Herbert was going to be one of those really came down to a game time decision beforehand. And there was a lot of conversation on whether the Chargers should be putting him out there, risking possible, further aggravation of the injury. And it seemed like a majority of people were on board with it, just based off of what we had seen during the practice report, that Justin was feeling better throughout the week. Even Jim Harbaugh was saying that he was feeling better as it got closer to game day. And honestly, watching the game, when Justin Herbert had protection, which for the majority of the first half he did, I thought he looked great. This wasn't a game that the Chargers were getting their run game off to a good start the way that they had during weeks 1 and 2. They were having to rely on Justin Herbert's arm. And I thought through the first half, he was precise, making good decisions. We all saw the great touchdown that he threw to Quentin Johnston. I thought he was working the middle of the field nicely to Ladd McConkey. I thought that there was a couple draft passes that should have been caught by some of his tight ends, but he was getting his tight ends involved in that game as well. And I thought Herbert played a very, very clean first half, and it actually was looking in a nice rhythm.
For the most part.
For the most part, yes. You could say the Simi Fehoko pass that was missed, that should honestly have probably gone for a touchdown to, take 7 instead of 3 at that point in game. I get it. I wasn't saying that he was flawless.
Sure.
But given the circumstances, I thought he played a very, very clean and efficient game. And it may have turned into one of those games where everybody was expecting that was the type of game that you were going to need Justin Herbert's arm, because the running game just wasn't there for that first half. Then you get to the second half. And we all hear reports before halftime from Daniel Popper coming out saying that he didn't see Rashawn Slater out there during one of the last drives of the Chargers. Thankfully, we got reports at that point in time that Rashawn Slater was coming back. He had his helmet on. First series out.
Wasn't right.
You could see it from the get-go. And they had Rashawn Slater's pec taped. And probably if you go back in Rashawn Slater's history of being the NFL, that may have been one of the worst beats that he had,
You don't see that.
You do not see that from Rashawn Slater. So something was clearly wrong. And that, obviously that sack led, or the strip sack led to what ended up following, because Rashawn Slater did not continue in the game after that. The Chargers had to reshuffle their offensive line, which then eventually led to the sack that put Justin Herbert out of the game. As Jim Harbaugh said in his post-game press conference, the minute he saw any indication of Justin Herbert limping, that he was going to be pulling him out of that game. So they obviously had a plan for that. And then it didn't get better with Taylor Heinicke. It didn't get better from the injury front, because Joe Alt ended up getting injured later in the game, shuffling, whether it was Jamari Sawyer at left tackle or them moving Trey Pipkins to left tackle. The Pittsburgh Steelers just smelled blood in the water defensively, and they brought it for the remainder of that second half. And the stats showed it, because the Chargers were not able to get a single yard offensively after that. So I get what you're saying, Dan, from the mistake aspect of what the defense played. And yes, I agree with it. But Pittsburgh just dialed it up to 11 once they saw, obviously, that the 2 tackles were out, Justin Herbert was out, and offensively they just couldn't get anything going. So it was a tough afternoon or morning to watch that game. And I think everybody's actually okay with the fact that the Chargers ended up losing that game. It was more so the aftermath of the fact that Justin Herbert was re-injured, Joe Alt was injured, Rashawn Slater was injured, Joey Bosa was injured, and then the league decides to suspend Derwin James yesterday for the upcoming game. So that's 5. That's a hell of a week. And can I just say on a tangent, and I tweeted about this after the game, week 3 for the Chargers sucks.
Gosh.
Historically, there is a trend that is going on because
week 3 should be the bye. Week 3 should be the bye.
Whatever you want to call it. I don't know what it is, but week 3 sucks. Last year, you lost Mike Williams for the year in the minute after the Minnesota game. The year before that, you lost both Rashawn Slater and Joey Bosa against the Jaguars earlier on in the season. And then, of course, comes this previous Sunday where you have 4 players get injured in the same game. Thankfully, nothing that is season ending, but still, week 3, get out of here.
Yeah, I'm with you. Let's get into some of the I think the hot button topics for Chargers fans. A lot of people in here talking about the Derwin James suspension, and honestly, both sides. Derwin James was suspended for a personal foul, unnecessary roughness play that we've all now seen. We've also seen probably 5 plays worse than that were not suspended across the NFL. This clearly looks to be a reputation style of suspension versus the specific play, because the verbiage they use in their suspension release does not match the play itself. That being said, Derwin James is playing like a man with a hair on fire and was all over the place on Sunday. But you saw the pros and cons of that. And you kind of, you talk about living to that fine line between aggressive and reckless. And he was teetering on reckless at times and got called for it. Now, rightfully so? I don't know. But sometimes you kind of have to read the room. And I think Derwin had 2 personal fouls in that game for a total like 30 yards, which we'll get to here in a second. A part of me is like, you've got to be kidding me. Of course, the Chiefs can get away with all this crap. And of course, it comes before week 4 against the Chiefs. And, they're out to get Derwin. But also, there's some of it that I think Derwin can help himself with. It sucks because the style of play that Derwin has is so fun to watch. And I think he has a bad stigma, because anyone who knows Derwin knows that he is not an ugly player. Like, go watch Cam Hayward. Go watch Christian Wilkins. Like, that's not Derwin. A lot of times he just is going hard and things happen. But what did you make of the suspension, Jake? Like, first off, is it justified? Take away the whether or not, it means that everyone's in the Chiefs' back pocket. Was it justified?
Has there been any suspension for what took place to Devonta Smith yet? And I bring that up because of the fact that you want to talk about reckless. I think that was more of an egregious hit of what took place with him. Now, I'm not trying to...
Oh, the Devonta Smith hit, you mean?
Devonta Smith,
yeah.
Yes. I'm not trying to compare apples to oranges here. If people want to say that this was based off of repeat offenses to Derwin James, okay, sure, you can make an argument for that. I think of when you look at the explanation that was brought to Derwin James to say that his play was that detrimental and dangerous. And look, if you're going to call it that way, then call it throughout the rest of the league.
There were 30 other tackles in the NFL that were worse.
Call it throughout the rest of the league, because the league we've obviously known for watching this game for so many years has a problem with consistency. And if that play is going to be called egregious, you could show me 4 other plays that took place on Sunday that were either equal or worse to what Derwin James performed. So I'm in the middle on this. I just wish that the league would look at it consistently and call it consistently and punish it consistently.
Yeah, Forgotten Locale says Derwin needs to be playing smarter. He's been doing this since 2022, but it seems like the NFL is singling him out, which is not judicious at all. Agreed. I see both sides of this, both positive and negative. The unfair part, though, the part that I think sucks the most, is him being kind of lumped into that category of like a dirty player, because that is so not Derwin. And it just, I don't know, it just sucks. Also, Rashee Rice going for 8 felonies. We got NBC commentators going crazy for him. They also got Kareem Hunt on that team, so that's cool. So next up, we talked about the Derwin stuff. Injuries. There's a couple questions here. MCL sprain for Joe Alt. That's really all we know. Could have been worse. Could have obviously been better. That one's, as soon as I heard sprain, I was like, whew, okay, thankfully.
Now all you have to wonder is what grade is the sprain, and which I would assume, as Jim Harbaugh alluded to in his press conference, that we would know more, as he said, by Wednesday. So depending on the severity of the sprain, if the Chargers get lucky, we're talking about a grade 1 sprain, which is usually about a 1 to 2 week injury, which would then put it in terms of perfect timing for him to possibly return after the bye for the game against Denver. So optimistic, that hoping that it's on the lower end of the injury table.
Yeah. Okay. So my optimistic take on this game, and I went back and watched, and it was actually kind of liberating to be able to watch the game, Jake, like not live and know that it was a loss. So you could just focus on it constructively, on kind of like what actually happened and why, versus just sticking to emotion. John Smith says, let's rest the injured in Herbert and take the 2-2 record on the bye week. I'll take the loss on this for a second. On X earlier today, I was like, prediction. And basically, any great player who's on the Chargers team is not going to play this week. And I included J.K. Dobbins. I included Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa, Rashawn Slater, Joe Alt, Justin Herbert, Derwin James, whatever. And I see this as like a load management. Shout out to Greg Popovich in the NBA. I know it's not an NBA season. I get there's only 17 games. It's hard enough beating the Chiefs as it is when fully healthy. But when you're banged up and you got your quarterback having to possibly go up against a team that's pretty hungry, obviously, defending champs, defensive line's nasty, Steve Spagnuolo knows what he's doing, got Frank Clark, Chris, I don't have to talk about that stuff anymore. Both tackles are out. Like, what are you expecting to go right? Realistic, like, do you want this team to win? Yes. Do I trust this Chargers coaching staff to get this team ready to go, regardless of who's out there? Absolutely. Ultimately, my goal and hopes for this team are to get them to win enough so that way they can make some noise in the playoffs. Whatever gets them to that, I'm good with. Do I want this team to tank this game and absolutely lose it purposefully? No. But I think there is some risk aversion and analysis, whether that means you put folks on a snap count, whether that means some guys are going through something. There are certain times where it's not worth the risk, when the risk is so much greater than the chances of you doing the unthinkable, winning that game without Justin Herbert and Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt. Could it happen? Sure. Any given Sunday. I love this coaching staff and what they can do. I don't know if it's worth all of it. It's not the popular, it's not the conventional way of thinking, but a part of me is just like, let's play the long game. You have a winnable schedule. You got a bye coming up. Maximize it. Give yourself essentially a 3-week bye for some of the players that either are risky at getting injured, maybe they're going through something minor, not sure, or that are hurt and need some time. I go back and forth. I would love to see this team, go Jim Harbaugh, competitors welcome, and win the whole thing and go out there on one leg, whatever. But like the insurance policy brain says, no. What would you rather have them do?
See, Dan, I get where everybody's mindset is, because at the end of the day, we all probably expect what the outcome is going to be after this Sunday. I think the biggest fear of everybody is not wanting to see anybody additionally get hurt. Now, on that note,
on top of the loss, is what you're saying. Yeah.
Yes. Now, on top of that note, I don't look at this in the same frame of view that we once looked at it when Brandon Staley played the Chargers to an extended period of time in a meaningless game before the playoffs. And we all know what took place after that. That to me was reckless decision-making. I think Jim Harbaugh is going to have everybody that is capable, that is healthy, they will play Sunday. because we know how he operates. He is a competitor down to his core, and he is going to instill that in every single one of his players. And I'm actually interested to see what type of a game plan that you end up going with for this Chiefs game. The fact that you don't have your left and your right tackles, how are they going to shuffle the line? Is it going to be Foster Sorrell at left tackle? If anything, after watching that game film, I would hope that they keep Trey Pipkins at guard and do not put him at – you're probably going to have to put him at right tackle. I would assume so, just based off of what you're going to have to shuffle with the line. You may have to insert Jamari Sawyer at right guard next to him. So now you've essentially – you're changing again 3/5 of your offensive line in one single week for a backup quarterback to come in and with the hopes of him being able to produce something. Can your run game get going behind this line? It doesn't look optimistic.
Well, again, you're going up against the Steelers team. So two games.
I get that.
It looked great. But one game down.
I understand that. But if you're going to tell me right now that the pass blocking is going to mirror what we saw against the Steelers, then it's going to be a hard time for the Chargers to get any type of production. I don't know how they're going to do that if they're not able to get this running game going. If you were to tell me that this was just going to be Justin Herbert's game out and you still had Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt, I would actually be much more optimistic about this, because I think that the Chargers can, if they had a healthy line, I think that they are capable of running on the Chiefs team and then dictating the pace from that point forward. And I think that you could create a game plan at that point with Taylor Heineke that you could create some interesting concepts. But with all 100%. These pieces out, that's maybe it's a weird thing is that I've got so many question marks about it, but I'm also very intrigued.
I think you'll learn a lot
they're going to draw this up. So Greg Roman and Jim Harbaugh obviously have a lot of work to do leading up to this game. Jesse Minter, as far as the defense goes, whether or not Joey Bosa is going to play, I still think the game plan is going to remain the same. This would probably be the expected game that you elevate Tremon Morris Brash, so you at least have a little bit more edge depth, so you can give some guys a break. In terms of the safety position, you're obviously going to have A.J. Finley, Tony Jefferson, Alohi Gilman out there. I'd be interested to know, are you going to probably stick Elijah Molden back there permanently at safety for this game, just given the fact that you're not going to have Derwin James? So I don't know. It's an interesting concept, Dan. We all probably know the result, but in terms of just being competitors, Jim Harbaugh is going to have everybody that is ready to go.
And I'm with you. And honestly, and again, I think, so I got caught up on the prediction. Here's what I think they will do. And is that maybe realistic? I don't know. Is it likely? Definitely not. Is it popular opinion? No, I don't think, at least from my replies and mentions, definitely not. But I would not be shocked at all if his coaching staff puts some of these guys that are a little bit high risk on a snap count and kind of see how this game plays out. If this game gets ugly early, no, why? Regardless of if, they could go, come on. I mean, so that would be a way to skirt the league imposing anything for them, just randomly taking them out of the game by not playing at all, but still being smart about the future of this season. Because as John Smith says, it's early in the season. It's early. And I know our defense will keep us in this game. I think they will. And again, even last week against the Steelers, I thought the defense did enough, honestly. Oh, sorry. That's not true. The defense didn't do enough. They were in positions to do enough, and then they crippled themselves over and over and over again. So I think this is kind of the mentality that I think a lot of people are kind of wrapping their heads around, Jake, is Forgotten Local says, let's be honest, even at our best, I don't think we can beat Kansas City. I'd still give us a 50-50 shot if they were healthy. So what are you doing with that? I don't know. I think sometimes, again, I took the L. I probably shouldn't have said prediction. I should have said it's what I would do if I was the head coach and I was trying my best to get this team to win 17 or as many games they can in 17. It's a tricky situation. You mentioned pass blocking, right? Here's some fun stats to think about when you're saying looking ahead. Trey Pipkins this past week, Jake. What do you think his pass blocking grade was according to PFF? Whatever number you say, it's lower.
I probably agree with that. So
give me a number. Give me a really low number that you think it would be.
Is it negative?
No. Okay, not that low.
What's the closest to 0 that we could get? I would assume
2 away from that.
Okay,
which I have not seen a number that low in ever for pass blocking. 2.3 pass blocking grade for Trey Pipkins. Jamari Sawyer 14.7. These are blood red in pass blocking grades. Bradley Bozeman isn't looking great either. 35.7 pass blocking grade. He hasn't looked great this season. But even Joe Alt, he looked good in run blocking, but pass blocking, not the best. First half, though, I thought he looked pretty good. I think that one got him, obviously.
Well, the Chargers schemed perfectly for TJ Watt because even the announcers were alluding to it. They were chipping TJ Watt on every single play, something that the Chargers were not able to do last year because they didn't have a tight end that was capable of doing so. And once Rashawn Slater went out of the game, that's when everything really started to fall apart because whoever it is that was rotation between Jamari Sawyer and Trey Pipkins at left tackle, you still had to put a tight end over there for TJ Watt. But when you realized how bad the left side of the line was doing, it didn't matter. You couldn't cover both edges. And then, of course, the one time that they are not chipping TJ Watt, he beats Joe Alt extremely bad and ends up getting that sack late in the game. So I thought the Chargers planned for it perfectly, and I thought that they executed well to keep TJ Watt at bay in the first half. But once that offensive line started to crumble, you saw just the rest of the protection formation was just a complete meltdown.
Yeah, and it was unfortunate. And I think this is probably the time to get into this. I went back and watched this game, and it was rough to watch, but I think for different reasons than maybe other people may have had. And for me, it was just like constant opportunities lost by this Chargers team on both sides. And I thought for the most part, like they played pretty darn good on both sides, but there were some catastrophic issues, right? Like the game kind of seemed very similar to the first half of that Raiders game 1, first half specifically. You know, like I'm going through this. Let me just highlight some of the mistakes that this team costed themselves, either directly resulting in points for the Steelers or a ton of yardage. And in an ugly, physical, medieval style game, time of possession, field position, obviously points matter. First series, offensive penalty negates Ladd McConkey's first down, immediately punts. Then the illegal formation on a punt cost the team additional 15 yards of field position. They started at the 20 instead of the 3 because I think that was when Dean Leonard ran out of bounds. So instead of starting at the 3, they get the 20. Then they go down and score. Second series, fumbled snap. Gotta love it. Then holding. All of a sudden, it's 3rd and 16. You're punting it. The defense played great early on. Derwin, Thule, Mack, Kristian Fulton, who continues the ball out, all look strong. Then you see that key tackle that Asante Samuel Jr. misses on Scotty Miller, which probably should talk about. For the most part, Asante does well, but the tackles that he does miss are backbreakers, it seems. So, missed tackle on Scotty Miller. That turned into that series. Again, that was on 3rd down. He was there for the stop to force a punt. Does not. Then Morgan Fox, I think, is what he lost containment, if I remember right. Bites on the RPO by Justin Fields, touchdown. Again, these are clear mistakes of the Chargers beating themselves. You know, you still saw J.K. Dobbins look nasty at times. He had some awesome cuts. Defense is holding them to 3 points at times. I mentioned the Herbert throw that he missed to Fehoko. That was on third down. That was in the end zone. That should have been a touchdown. But you still saw Ladd McConkey. You saw Quentin again making plays on that touchdown catch. Shout out to Justin for the eye candy there. Darius Davis on a sweep. First half, there was just a bunch of mistakes, right? But they still up in the game. Ugly. Defense doing what it needs to do. 10-7. You're feeling good. I think everybody at halftime was kind of feeling like, oh, this game's as advertised. So first half, I'm like, wow, okay, this is how it looks. This is how we all expected. But then this is where things went off the rails. But different for me than for others. Second half, let's go through some of these series for a second. On the first series for the Chargers defense, on a 3rd and short, I swear, I still don't think that Pittsburgh got that. I think they got a very generous call. Instead of it being 4th and inches, it was a first down. Okay. Then Derwin gets a 15-yard face mask. That's 15-yard of field position. 3 plays later, on 3rd and 15, I think Deion Henley just had an awesome tackle for a loss. Thule gets lost in coverage, gives up that explosive to Calvin Austin. But still, they hold to 3 points. Okay. First series on offense is when Rashawn Slater gets beat with a strip sack. Punt. Okay. Fine. Doesn't matter. It's okay. Special teams penalty again, along with a poor punt by J.K. Scott. Pittsburgh starts the ball for this next series at the 41. But no worries. Defense immediately gets the interception. Jake, right? We're still doing good. 10-10. Then Justin gets hurt on the very next play. They end up punting. Again, Derwin gets another unnecessary roughness penalty on the catch from Freiermuth. That's another 15 yards. Then they get the BS roughing the passer penalty on Khalil Mack. Tack on another 15 yards. Are you sensing a theme? This is 35 yards already on one drive. Same drive. Holding on Asante Samuel Jr. on 3rd down when Thule gets the sack to force the field goal. Another first down. Given up. How many of these mistakes can they live through when their quarterback is not Justin Herbert anymore?
Well, Dan, this was Murphy's Law, essentially, in the second half for this team. Take away this game. Look at what the Chargers had done the first 2 weeks. They were able to go out there and execute their game plan in terms of defensively. They played very disciplined, very tough. The Chargers were they were the lead in defense in terms of points allowed for the first 2 weeks. Defense did their job. If we're looking at this in a macro sense, like, yes, everything just fell apart in one half of football. You lost your quarterback for the game. Your defense started to continue to make mistakes. And
costly at the worst times.
I get it. I get it. But
this
look,
isn't Najee Harris blowing him up for 15. Like they had a couple random plays that they got through. Sure.
Dan, have you become me from last year after watching a game? Honestly, am I going to have to be the one to just kind of just reel you in for a second? Like, look, we knew that regardless of whether the events of Sunday's game against the Steelers played out the way they did, you take that game, you take any game for the potential rest of the season, we knew it wasn't going to be flawless execution. Yes, it was a lot of great things to build on from what we saw through the first 2 weeks. And yes, I do agree with you that I don't feel that it was the Steelers ended up taking the will of the Chargers away. The Chargers, unfortunately, through their luck in week 3 of all things, get injured. And once they lost some of their keynote players as far as how they're supposed to move the ball offensively, Steelers did what I thought that they should have done. They recognized it. They went after it. And to their credit, they won those matchups.
But here's the thing,
you could see that in the stat line of them only allowing 0 yards to the Chargers offensively in the second half. Now,
fair.
Now, here's the last thing I'm going to say. And this is why I have more confidence in it. Because, yes, I get it. Costly penalties, things that shouldn't have been done, certain calls that shouldn't have been made. You mentioned the Khalil Mack roughing the passer when he was pushed into Justin Fields. I thought that was a very spotty call from the official. But what gives you confidence moving forward? I'll tell you what does. I can tell you that as it relates to Jesse Minter, Ryan Fitkin, they're going to be in the film room this week. You mentioned Darius Davis on the jet sweep. In terms of what he was doing from a return aspect, there were a lot of questionable decisions in terms of when he was returning. When he was returning certain balls, there was one in the end zone that I thought, like, dude, just take the knee right there. And then there was other ones that he fielded at the one and decided to run with that. So, it was the other way around. But I feel, and as we have been talking about Jesse Minter the way we have over the last several months in terms of adaptation, correcting mistakes, I do not think that you're going to see the same type of undisciplined play this week against the Chiefs.
And that's why
I really do not. And these are things that you did not get under Brandon Staley. These were things that you did not get under the defense on a week-to-week basis, because it ended up being the same problems week in, week out. When we were told that they were working on it, they couldn't do it. We knew that there was disconnect in the locker room between player and coach. I don't feel that that's there anymore. So
I agree.
You could chalk this up as a half of football that is an anomaly. Everything just went wrong for the Chargers in that second half.
And it was, but I think for me though, this is where, if I'm Jim Harbaugh and I'm Jesse Minter, I am pissed because even with the injuries, they still could have won this game with the TJ Watt sack, with the injuries to Rashawn Slater and to Joe Alt, with the explosive play to Calvin Austin, with the missed tackle from Alohi Gilman, and all of that withstanding, they still should have won this game. But they literally beat themselves in a game that you cannot do that. And that is what these guys preach constantly. That's what's frustrating to me. And I shouldn't say guarantee, I'm pretty darn confident that one of these coaches, if not all of them, looked at this team after the game and was like, guys, what are we doing? That just is not, that's not the Chargers football that we're used to seeing through 2.5 games and what we've been hearing from the coaching staff and front office all offseason.
I guarantee you the players are asking themselves the same damn questions. I guarantee you that they are owning their mistakes as well.
Real quick, a couple things. Chris asks, I've been curious to ask, are you standing or sitting down during the podcast? I'm standing. Jake is sitting.
Dan has one of those elevator desks that he's able to adjust, which is nice, but it maybe it doesn't look that way because maybe he has like some shelves that are stacked really, really high. So it gives off the perception that he possibly is sitting. I'm obviously sitting.
Yes. Let's see. I don't know. J Dave 03. He's clearly out to get me. Dan doesn't have confidence. If he ran the team wouldn't either. Oh, okay. Sit half the team and the confidence was out the window. I don't know what you're trying to prove here. I'm telling you my opinion of what I would do if I was running this team to give this team the best chance to get into the playoff and make some noise. If you want to go down with the ship, so to speak, and risk a lot of things, that's probably what most people would do. I get that I'm in the minority here. It's fine. But let it go. It's all good. Let's see. Offense tired out the defense, even with penalties, says just here to like the video. Hope you like the video. If everyone is healthy, Chargers could have won the game. Injuries beat the Chargers and beat the defense.
I think that was a bigger thing. It's like when the Chargers offense
is not the injuries though. Like
it's Dan.
The injuries are not what lost them this game.
I'm not saying that the injuries were not a factor because, come on, they are, especially when you lose your left and your right tackle, when your center is not blocking the way that he
that should have been a 16-13
when you don't have your franchise quarterback. But even still, you take the same game plan. You take Herbert out of there. They weren't able to move the ball. So, yes, when the defense isn't able to get any sort of a rest because the offense isn't able to create any type of a drive, yes, eventually they're going to get worn out. Dan, let's take a look at what was taking place on the opposite side of the coin with Pittsburgh Steelers. When the Chargers were able to get pressure, Justin Fields was pretty damn good against the pressures in terms of his completion rate, his passer rating. ended up throwing a touchdown under pressure. That was the one to Calvin Austin. Let's just chalk it up to what it is. Like I said, everything went wrong, but this was just one game. This was one game.
100%.
This is not the Brandon Staley era of defense anymore, where we have seen this same movie over and over and over again. Jesse Minter, Ryan Fitkin, Jim Harbaugh, Greg Roman, every single one of them is going to be upset for how the game turned out. The players are going to be upset too.
Jake is now the voice of reason.
I know. I don't know what Twilight Zone episode we are watching. Amazing what a head coach that knows how to instill a different type of attitude in this team can do to me. And I'm not even playing for the team. But I appreciate the notoriety because even I don't know how we got here.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on. Anthony says, we have a top 3 defense still, even without Derwin. Heineke will win this for us. Do y'all see? Jake, you and I were chatting a bit today.
Look, I mean,
hold on.
Go ahead. Say what you were going to say.
Imagine the euphoria.
Yes, there it was.
Imagine the euphoria if without Alt, without Slater, without Derwin, without Justin, whatever, with the chip stacked against them, this coaching staff does the unthinkable.
Dan, that's why I'm interested.
That's
that's why I'm intrigued.
Coaching matters, right? Coaching matters. Jim Harbaugh, you got Jesse Minter in a defense. You know, the depth is important. You got Joe Hortiz continuing to try to rebuild and reshape the roster to be more competitive. Jalen Reagor now in the practice squad. Like, not that Jalen Reagor is going to have anything to do with this game. I'm just saying, like, generally speaking, this whole new era of Chargers football. Coaching matters. And everybody's talked about how coaching can elevate teams even when talent isn't there.
Dan, look what's been going on in Green Bay.
Imagine
Malik Willis has led his team to 2 victories while Jordan Love has not been playing. Coaching definitely matters. So do I see that the chances of the Chargers beating the Chiefs good given the current status that they're in? No. But I'm more intrigued from the standpoint of how they're going to execute their game plan, both offensively and defensively, against this team, given the fact that they have essentially 5 players that are not going to be playing in this game. Taylor Heineke is not a newbie. He's a veteran. He's obviously been in some tough games, won some tough games behind worse offensive lines, and has found success. Is he going to be able to replicate that? I don't have the most confidence against the Chiefs, obviously, in him doing that. But in terms of what this coaching staff is about, in terms of what Greg Roman, Jesse Minter have preached in terms of game prepping in a different way based off the opponent. It's not just wash, rinse, repeat. It's being able to have that type of adaptability. Yeah, I'm intrigued on how they're going to try to execute this game plan.
Okay, now we're talking, Jake. Now we're talking. I know we went into some negativity there for a bit. HH Force, again, continues. Mahomes hangs at least 40 piece on Sunday. But Jake, this is where the excitement, this is where the new era starts to creep in. We got David versus Goliath in the chat. John Smith says, look at the Panthers beating the Raiders. You never know. Anthony says, look what Dalton did to the Raiders. Could you imagine? I know, like, again, any given Sunday, Chargers walk out with a victory, 3-1 atop the AFC West, going into the bye, getting help. Imagine the euphoria, Chargers fans. Like, that would be the ultimate flex of flexes for Jim Harbaugh to start this season. Go out and beat Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, and Spagnuolo and the defending Super Bowl champions without your prized possession and the 2 guys protecting him.
Look, it would make for a great story, and the way that the Chiefs are playing right now, just in terms of their overall play, even Patrick Mahomes alluded to it, that it has not been their best 3 weeks. Again, I don't have the utmost confidence in any of that taking place, and I get it. I understand. This hurts for just a multitude of reasons. Not just, it's in like 3 phases. The Chargers lose to the Pittsburgh Steelers. The aftermath of that is that you have the injuries, and then you already know you're not going to have those players for your biggest division rival, a game that we have all had circled for months and months and months. And this isn't the Chiefs at Arrowhead. This is the Chiefs coming to your house.
I'll be there, by the way.
And you don't have 5-year players. I get how much this hurts. I fully understand it. But at the end of the day, look, if the worst comes out of it that the Chargers are 2-2 and they go into their bye week and you get all your guys back for that divisional game in Denver following the bye, it could be worse. It could be a hell of a lot worse in all retrospect. So I've kind of accepted that is what the immediate future is going to be for the Chargers. I have made peace with it. As much as I don't like it, as much as I don't want to see that happen, given the circumstances, we still have plenty of games to go. And if it means getting into the playoffs, let's just I feel like it was such a turnaround, because when we first got the schedule release, everybody was pissed that they had such an early bye. And now the bye couldn't come at a better time.
It's tough. Again, a lot of negativity. Let's get some of these voicemails, Jake. For folks, OGs for the show, previously we had a song which I thought was perfect for this Chargers game this past Sunday, and how Chargers fans, a lot of them are feeling, was called A Life of Dying. Probably hear it in your headphones. A lot of Chargers fans are kind of feeling a little dead inside and are living a life of dying watching this Chargers team go to 2-1. Going up against the Chiefs team. Jake, let's get to some of these voicemails. Ready? Again, for those who have not seen this, Jake has not heard any of these voicemails. These are all going to be live for Jake to listen to and react to live. Again, you can call into the hotline anytime, 323-902-7586. Again, 323-902-7586. Jake, voicemail number 1.
Turn that up a bit, Dan. There we go.
Not calling to bash on the boys or be negative about anything, because it's kind of hard to win a game when your starting quarterback isn't in the game. And to add on top of that, when you lose your right guard and your left guard and your pass rush, have to pass rush at least with Bosa. Shitty ending. I think we were there neck and neck with them for the first half. To the third quarter. But yeah, man, tough loss. I think for the most part, we handled. Defense did pretty good in the first half. Not sure what happened in the second, but in the fourth quarter, it seems like they were just running the ball at their will against us.
Sort of. Again, that was the last series they did.
Towards the end, but again, kind of tough when your O-line, your D line is kind of not working, or by that point, tired.
Okay, Jake.
I was always interested, Dan, because we had celebrated 2 victory Mondays prior to this show, and I was wondering, like, how are we going to accept like that first loss whenever it was going to happen? I get it. Trust me, I have heard worse voicemails than that. Everything that he said was, in my opinion, for the most part, ended up being right as it relates to the second half. The defense just got worn down. Too many mistakes that ended up continuing those drives for the Steelers. But I take this as just a full-on anomaly. I really, really do. I think that the Chargers know the situation of what they were in. The players knew it. The coaches knew it. And they know what needs to be corrected. You go forward this week. You make some of those corrections.
J. Dave 03. Abundance of caution was through camp. Now it matters. Harbaugh has talked about Warriors being Warriors. Let the Warriors play.
I don't disagree. Everybody who's healthy is going to be playing in this game. And that's why I'm so intrigued to see this game plan that they have. And hopefully they could go out and execute it. I'm very intrigued to see what they can do.
I mean, I am intrigued as well, for sure. Before we get to the voicemail, Jake, let's talk about some positive things here. Okay. This has been a little negative, even for your liking. Highlights. So no low lights. Highlights from this game.
Highlights, obviously, Quentin Johnston is one.
Can we talk about Q?
First of all, it was a great throw by Herbert, recognizing the coverage and fitting that ball into that window.
Great job by him just to get the defender not to look that way for a hot second.
It's a great trend that we have seen through week 1, week 2, most notably, and on Sunday. He now has 3 touchdowns through the last 2 games. I loved how they were utilizing Ladd McConkey through the middle of the field, which is where I thought that they were attacking very nicely for the Steelers defense. Obviously, all that changed when Justin Herbert went down, but I thought that the way that they were deploying Ladd in those type of short yardage situations, because he was able to get some separation, get a little bit more additional yards out in space. That's obviously where he thrives. So in terms of that game plan, which I hope that that's something that you could possibly build towards what you have with Taylor Heineke, I love that. If that's how they're planning on utilizing that game, and yes, this probably would have been a different look type of game if the running game that we have seen from this Chargers offense through the first 2 weeks was able to get going a little bit earlier during the against the Steelers. This probably would have looked a little bit differently. But look, I had no problems with Justin Herbert being back there in the first half. I thought he looked solid. I thought he looked precise, save for a couple passes. But I thought for the most part, he played a terrific first half. And I thought that the game plan that they came in with everybody talking about how they were pounding the rock, and we saw the stats for what they were in the running game, the Chargers kind of flipped that on the Steelers for a majority of a couple of those first drives, and they were able to create positive plays. So we'll see what ultimately ends up developing with Taylor Heineke. Hopefully the running game ends up panning out a little bit better. And if you have the same plan to deploy Quentin and Ladd in a similar type of fashion, I think you can find success.
There was a comment here that I was trying to get to. I think it's way in the depths, but basically it was saying that the Chargers went up against a Steelers team that has been playing this brand of football for decades. And the Chargers have been playing this for a whopping 2 games, and they just got beat by a team who's done it longer than they have. And I would say there's part of that, which is true. Like, we knew this is what we were expecting. I think it's just unfortunate that the Chargers team couldn't rise to the challenge and play smart, disciplined football. I think a smart, disciplined football with everything that transpired with injuries, they still win. I'm pretty confident that this HH4, which I know he's been a long-time listener, first-time caller if he ever calls in, I'm embarrassed to be a Chargers fan. Softest players in football. Okay, same energy. Wasn't saying that the last 2 wins. So let's pump the brakes here a bit. I think it's it's a little much. Ladd McConkey, you mentioned it, Jake. Man, you talked about it at training camp. We saw it at training camp. Ladd McConkey is always open. And you see it over and over and over and over again. He looks good, man. It's like an automatic first down every time he catches it. I thought he was great. Kristian Fulton, I don't think you can ask for a better 3 games to start his Chargers career than what we've seen so far. Kristian Fulton's been fantastic. J.K. Dobbins, again, another highlight. I thought he was wonderful. Any other player highlights?
No, unfortunately, the highlights were limited to 1 half, Dan. So there wasn't much that we could really take away from it. But those names that you brought up, those are correct. And hopefully you build off of those and not only have that, but you have a lot of other people that can join in on some of those big time plays.
But I also feel like even in the second half at times, there were times where the Chargers players were doing well. Like I thought throughout the first half especially, but part of the second half too, I thought Thule played really well. Khalil Mack was doing Khalil Mack things. I thought Derwin, I know there was some reckless and he cost his team a lot of yards, but he also had some really good play too, which is unfortunate that it sucks. Someone mentioned Poona Ford, 100%. I thought Poona Ford again looked good at times. They were not fundamentally sound. Missed a bunch of tackles. I think it was 10 or 11. And costly penalties at the worst times. So, state of the team. If you have questions, thoughts, put them in the chat. We'll do our best to kind of do a rapid fire here as we kind of continue through. Question here, $5 donation by Steve Rutledge. Jake, I'll let you take this one. What do you think should be the starting 5 on the offensive line? Also, hopefully Brash gets activated. Steven, thank you. Jake, what say you?
Daniel Popper kind of put this out in his article as well, because there's a number of different combinations you could go with. When Rashawn Slater went out of that game, the first contingent that they did was they put Jamari Sawyer at left tackle. He then got beat. Then they moved Trey Pipkins to left tackle, and it didn't get any better from that point on. So how do you move forward with this? Daniel Popper has talked about the possibility of them elevating Foster Sorrell and putting him at the left tackle position. You then kick Trey Pipkins to right tackle, and then you insert Jamari Sawyer at right guard. There have been other conversations. I would expect, no matter where they put him, because he is very versatile, I would expect Jordan McFadden to be active for this game. Where does he end up playing along the line? That remains to be seen. But I imagine him to be active for this game. There have been other conversations about, do you move Brendan Hymas in the center position because of the pass protection from Bradley Bozeman has just not been what it needed to be over the first 3 weeks. There's a lot of different combinations for this. If it was me, Dan, there's a part of me that wants to go back to the valiant effort that Jamari Sawyer put up 2 years ago when Rashawn Slater went down for the season and performed very, very well for the remainder of that year. You still could do that. Again, we are talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers defense, who at that point in the game were just flat out headhunting. I mean, that shows you just how ridiculous that defensive line is, because they can lose Alex Highsmith and literally just not even miss a step.
I don't want to bait you, but thoughts on Cam Hayward?
I'm not gonna try to stay here and say, like, look, there was 3 people converging on Justin Herbert. I know everybody wants to point the finger at Cam Hayward because of what took place years ago, and that was totally justified, because that was egregious, that was dirty. But look, at the end of the day, everybody was coming in to 3 people hit Justin Herbert. It wasn't just Cam Hayward on
Unfortunately, you're not wrong.
Yes. So just, hey, offensive line needs to do a better job on max protect, and that doesn't happen. But you couldn't do that given the fact that the personnel that was out there. So how do you make this starting 5 combination? I don't know. I don't think that this is simply just a one player plug solution, because you have both of your bookends out, and it doesn't necessarily look the best on paper when you know who's going into those certain spots.
This is where you're hopeful that to stay ready is point. I can see heavy tight end sets.
Definitely.
Eddie Edsky Munoz says our tight end's going to earn their pay this week to help our offensive line. Yes. Like I would love to see this offense take on the Harbaugh personality, take on the Michigan side of things, where they just were not necessarily offensively superior to everybody else, but they just imposed themselves, and they said, to hell with it. We'll rely on our defense. We'll run it 30 times in a row if we have to. Heavy set, do what we need to do. And if Minter can get to it, yeah.
If you were asking me to put a wager on it, Dan, my bet would be that Foster Sorrell ends up being the left tackle. Jamari Sawyer ends up being the right guard. Trey Pipkins ends up kicking out to right tackle.
Okay. Next, voicemail. Voicemail number 2. And I'm going to try to limit these to 30 seconds. So moving forward, I'll put it in the voicemail thing, but 30 seconds or less, because some of these I think can go on for like 2 minutes. So can't have that going on. So I'll do the first part of this, see what we can get to.
Do you think the Chargers are going to regret not taking center in the second round, like Zach Frazier, who was incredibly good yesterday? Yeah.
Are the Chargers going to regret not getting a center in the draft?
Look, I will say this. I was surprised, and this is you're talking now to someone who loved Zach Frazier throughout the draft process last year.
Yep.
Loved Zach Frazier. And the results are evident of why I loved Zach Frazier. I was a bit surprised because the center class, I thought last year was extremely underrated. And I thought as we got later in those couple rounds that the Chargers may have targeted one of those remaining centers, whatever we're talking in the 4th round, 5th round, hell, even as you got down to the 7th. Do I think that they're going to regret it? Look, here's the thing about the NFL draft, and I know you don't necessarily recognize this when all the players get drafted because we're talking about them. We're talking what they can obviously build to this team. And we know already within the first 3 weeks that when it comes to them selecting Joe Alt, that, look, despite criticism, even
hindsight's 2020.
Hindsight's 2020, but they knew what they needed. They knew what the priorities were, and it ended up being the right decision. I think them selecting Ladd McConkey when they did and trading up for him without really giving up anything was also the right move. Let's not forget the Chargers had 4 wide receivers on their roster before they drafted Ladd McConkey. By the end of the draft, they ended up drafting 3 at that point in time. So you definitely needed to add receiving core help. You can't fix everything through the draft. That is one of the biggest things that you come to realize after the draft class. And as Dan and I had talked about, when you start going through the Tom Telesco draft classes and the players that were selected
even get me started.
And that are no longer here, it really just shows you that there were a lot of swings and misses when it just came to overall team building.
And it shows you how many holes they had to fill when they
Yes.
had that many draft selections this year and still.
So back to the question. Do I think that they regret it? No. And I'll say, because they're in the room, they know what needs to be done at that point in time. Bradley Bozeman had already been signed. Do I think that they prioritize getting another center in this year's class? 100%. You have to. You have to do it.
Yeah.
And look, we've already kind of seen a glimmer of it because we know where this coach and GM, and as far as their priorities goes, it means protecting number 10 any way you can. Does that mean that they're going to take a center in round 1 come next April?
No.
Not necessarily.
No, they're not.
But you're definitely going to see them address it one way or the other.
Yeah. Anthony Joseph asked, what's Brendan Rice's status?
Well, he was active on Sunday.
Sitting on the bench. I think I want to see Brendan Rice.
Look,
now,
me, everybody does.
What could we see with off? Yeah.
I don't know. I just hope that when it comes to, let's remember, after this week, DJ Chark is eligible to come off of IR.
Eligible to. Yeah.
Eligible. So is there a good chance that DJ Chark is elevated and active by the time we get to the Broncos game in week 6? Yes. As far as everything that we've heard from Jim Harbaugh up to this point is that the progression with DJ Chark is going well. I want to see Brendan Rice get an opportunity and a good opportunity before anything like that happens. There was a reason to be made during preseason of why you kept 6 receivers on this roster. Find a way to get Brendan Rice the ball.
Yeah, I will say, was not expecting Quentin to have this start. Like that's a good. I think the Brendan Rice story would have been a lot bigger if we haven't seen Quentin do what he's doing. So again, credit to Quentin for what he's done so far this season. Would love to see it continue. Let's get to another one, Jake, real quick before you roll out of here. Voicemail number 3.
Hey, guys. Thanks for taking my voicemail. Listen, it's disappointing to lose, but it's not unexpected. To try to win 2 back-to-back road games, especially when you don't even have a chance to go home, is always tough against a Steelers team that we know is a deadly violent team, ranked number 2 in defense on the road. Not easy. Injuries, they happen, but they're tough this week. I'd say, you know what, take this one. Sit everybody who's hurt, Bosa, Alt, Slater, even Herbert. Go into next week, concede the L. I know it's hard to say, but concede it. Go into the bye week 2-2, 1-1 in the division. It's not the worst thing in the world, especially when the ultimate goal here is a 10-7, 11-6 wild card berth. It's okay. We don't want to push it too much. Go Bolts.
The idea and the plan that Jim Harbaugh and company had in terms of staying on the East Coast, I thought was the right move.
I do too. I agree.
Because the Chargers, in the grand scape of the entire schedule that they have, they are the one team that travels the most mileage throughout this season. And when they do it and where they're going. So I thought after that game against the Carolina Panthers, them staying on the East Coast was the right thing to do to properly acclimate. Now, I get it because you're away from your normal facilities, you're away from your normal routine, and sometimes it can be tough to acclimate to that. But in general, I don't think at all that them spending 2 weeks on the East Coast had anything to do with their performance come Sunday. Again, it was Murphy's Law in the second half for the Chargers, just in terms of everything that went wrong. To the end of his question, I don't think that you concede this L against the Chiefs. It feels like climbing Mount Everest in a matter of 2 hours. It seems like it's impossible to do. But at the end of the day, Jim Harbaugh is going to have these guys ready to compete. Fully agree with them that as far as all 4 players that are injured, 1 that's suspended, that you're not going to see out there. Adam Schefter was talking earlier this week on the Pat McAfee podcast that he believes that there is a chance that Justin Herbert could talk. I don't see that happening at all. And if that simply just means from the standpoint of the competitor that Justin Herbert is, fully get that. We've seen him play through so many damn injuries of his career. It's been well documented the type of competitor that he is. But I do not see any reason that Justin Herbert should play this game, especially when you have the 2 best players on your offensive line out. So not necessarily conceding as far as the loss to the Chiefs. The timing sucks more than anything for this to happen. I get it. But in the grand scheme of things of where we need this team to go, playoffs, Justin Herbert shouldn't be playing. Even if he feels like he can, I wouldn't do it.
Forgotten Locale says, at some point, someone needs to step in and protect Herbert from himself. Yeah, I'm there with you. Are we going to see a Jefferson sighting to replace Derwin for 1 game? Tony Jefferson. Jake, do you think he comes in?
I mean, yeah, you need to have that.
Or is it going to be Molden?
Well, I mean, I think that you'll do a combination of any one of them, because we know that Molden can be that flex type of player who can play either in the nickel or at the safety position. So I think that Jesse Minter is going to deploy him in the same fashion that he has deployed him over the first 2 weeks. But you definitely need a little bit more help at safety with Derwin not being back there. So in terms of the amount of snaps at which position that Molden or Jefferson, or obviously Jefferson plays permanently at safety, but in terms of how you move Molden, you probably keep him more at the safety spot.
Let's see. Ben Herbert, according to Butter's ID. Ben Herbert magic, in effect, harder to break. If this was the old regime, Alt would have an MCL tear and Slater would have a pec tear. We've seen injuries like that in the past. So I can't say he's wrong. Last one, Jake. Voicemail number 4.
Yeah, this is Alex Balch. Saw you guys' post on X. Honestly, today was kind of one of those days where, it was okay to lose that game. We got to prepare for next week against KC. But we came out fighting in the first half for sure. That defense is nasty, though, especially with Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt going out in the second half. I mean, we could only muster up -5 yards on offense. That's not good. But you can also
that's not good.
See that Herbert is the heart and the life of this team. It's one of those things where, if you don't got him on the field, it's going to become a really, really, really big issue, especially with having Easton Stick as a third string. I mean, you're kind of stuck at that point. But, biggest thing is this week doesn't matter as much as next week. And so I'm okay with the loss. But, yeah, honestly, I mean, it's kind of worrisome that you see Slater and Joe Alt go out, but I think it's precautionary reasons they did that.
Nope, not precautionary.
So my biggest thing is let's just make sure that we're ready for next week. And then
okay, Jake, let's make sure we're ready for this week.
That's why I'm so intrigued by this, Dan. This is the first real big challenge for this coaching staff to look at it in terms of roster to say, okay, we know how to game plan. We've obviously seen that from this coaching staff through the first 3 weeks.
Yep.
But how do you do that when it's your backup quarterback, 2 of your offensive or your best offensive linemen are out for this game? Your center's not playing up to the ability that he needs to be playing with. You're down your starting safety due to a bogus suspension. and one of your best pass rushers and edge setters is not playing for this game. That's a hell of a tough task when we're talking about going up against the Super Bowl champs. We're not talking about this team going against an 0-3 team.
They will certainly be the Chiefs will certainly be favored to win. Let's just put it that way.
The last I saw that the line, I think, was at 8.5, I believe, is what the latest line was. But still, Dan, this is everything that I just said gives me intrigue because this isn't the Mike McCoy days. This isn't the Anthony Lynn days. This is not the Brandon Staley days. I'm interested to see how this coaching staff is going to game plan with the personnel that they have. I'm interested to see how they deploy it. I'm interested to see how they execute it. I'm actually intrigued watching that game on Sunday. I know it's, given the fact of who you're going against and the timing of these injuries, it sucks to watch. I'm not saying to lay down. Jim Harbaugh is going to have his guys that are out there ready to play.
Same. I'm with you.
So if anything, I'm just intrigued to see how Taylor Heineke's going to do, given the fact of who's in front of him protecting, and how they're going to execute their game plan to put points on the board.
Yeah, I'm with you. And he says, we just need some turnovers. Hopefully Mitchell brings a scheme to disrupt Chiefs. And then last question here, Jake, before we get out of here. What percentage would you give the Chargers to win currently? Let's just say Justin doesn't start.
Justin's not going to start.
That's the world we're living in right now. Yeah.
Yes, that I'm very confident in. I'll give it a 25% chance of them to win. Again, that's not me poo-pooing the team. It's everything from who you lost. It's also who you're going up against. If the Chargers were going up against anybody that was a 1-2, 2-1, 0-3, whatever the hell it may be, I would actually love their chances. Not saying that they're going to lay down, nor do I believe that they will. Even under similar type of circumstances with Justin Herbert being hurt or other players not being involved in the game, regardless of what you want to say, even in losses, because someone even had posted the Chargers have the longest home game losing streak against the Chiefs. You go back and you look at those games, majority of them are still competitive. They're still competitive because the players themselves know what that game means. They know how long that other team has ruled the AFC West, and they don't like it. And they're still going to do everything that they can to beat that team.
Yeah. Nico says, you don't want them to lay down, yet you don't want Dobbins to play, Dan. Look, Nico, I mentioned it already. I'm feeling the anxiety. I'm feeling the scare and the risk associated with this coming game. It's what I would do. I'm not saying that it's the smart thing. I mean, I think it's the less risky approach to the long story of the season. But yeah, I'd love to see this team go out and beat the brakes off of the Chiefs and also come out healthy. Those are the two things I would love to see most. But again, we've seen crazy stuff happen. Did you see the Jaguars get smoked last night? The Bengals are 0-3. Ravens are 1-2. There's a lot of weird things going on right now. Panthers just beat the Raiders. Dolphins haven't won. I think I saw something. They haven't led for 1 second of any of their games yet this season. Dolphins are 0-3. The AFC wildcard specifically is like, I know we're only week 3.
Dolphins won their first game, John.
Okay, then I'll take that L. There was some stat I saw where the Dolphins hadn't led for maybe it was since Tua went out. That may have been what it was. I don't know. Anyways, clearly we're at the part where I'm just saying random stuff at this point. Anything else, Jake, before we roll out of here?
No, it's take this as group therapy. We all know what it is that we're going through in terms of leading up to this week against our division rival. It's tough to compound everything in terms of the timing and who's not going to be playing most likely, and having to go up against a team that we all were just ready to go for, whether or not you won or lost the Pittsburgh Steelers game. You knew that if you got out of that game unscathed without any injuries, that we would still be hyped for this game. Everything just kind of compounds, though, when you have the bye week the following week on top of that, and just trying to get everybody back to full strength. At the same time, you still need to go out, compete, and play a football game. And hopefully for the Chargers, do it well. And I can say with more confidence, honestly, coming from the historical pessimist that I have been, I can even admit to a turnaround in my attitude and my perspective when Dan and I have seen the change through training camp with Jim Harbaugh. This is why everybody went berserk the day that it was announced that Jim Harbaugh was the hire for the Los Angeles Chargers' next head coach. This is why everybody went berserk over the corresponding people that he brought with him to Michigan. Now he has a tough test on his hands, given the fact that his quarterback is out, his offensive linemen are out, one of his best pass rushers most likely doesn't practice, one of his best players on defense has been suspended. But he's not going to be looking at this game any different type of a way. I'm just interested to see now when he has these things that are stacked against him going up against the Super Bowl champs, how does he respond? And honestly, I'm excited for it. Whether the results of this coming Sunday end in a loss or a win, I'm intrigued to see what the game plan is.
Okay, real quick. I wasn't crazy. What part of this is wrong? The Miami Dolphins are the only team in the NFL. This is from ESPN NFL. To not hold a lead for a single second this season. They had the best total offense in the NFL regular season last year. Is that maybe did they? I forget. Did they win in overtime?
No. It was 4 quarters against the Jaguars.
So is NFL and ESPN wrong? To not hold.
I don't know. Maybe that was a last-second field goal. I can't remember all the intricacies.
There's some
of that
technicality,
game, but they beat them 20-17.
I'm guessing it was at the end of the game, which probably means technically didn't hold a lead for anything. Okay, I'm not crazy. I swear I saw that somewhere. Evidence here in front of you. Jake, anything else before we get out of here? I know it's been a long couple days for Chargers fans. Didn't go the way that folks wanted to, but I think for the most part, we understand what happened, what's ahead, the stakes that are in front of us, but also that it's still a young season and the Chargers team has a lot of fight left.
That's what it is, Dan. That's all it is. The first quarter of the season's about to end. Hell, you even heard Joe Burrow talking about their season. Yeah, they're 0-3, and they still have 14 games left to go. It's still a long season. And for the Chargers, 2 weeks from now, the bye couldn't come at a better time. Regardless of the results on Sunday, at that point, rest, regroup, get back to work, because you have another divisional game that'll be coming right after the bye.
Yep, and rookie quarterback. But until then, if you have not done so already, please hit that like and subscribe on YouTube. Helps us out a ton. We have a giveaway going on X right now. The Chargers offense scores 2 touchdowns. All you got to do is follow and retweet the post we have, and you will be entered to win a Chargers jersey of your choice this coming Sunday versus the Chiefs. Again, just got to score 2 touchdowns on offense, and we'll give away a jersey to someone who follows us and retweets that post. For Jake Hefner, you can find him at Jake D. Hefner. Myself, you can find at Dan W. Sports. Thank you so much for tuning in to Chargers Unleashed. We appreciate all of you, and we'll talk to you next on Chargers Unleashed.